Hi, and welcome to another video by Get It Done Home Repairs. Today we're going to talk about how to repair, whether it's a small hole, a medium-sized hole, or a very large hole in sheetrock, so that you can make it as if the hole was never there before. So we're going to start with the smallest one first. I'll show you how to do that. That's obviously it's going to be the easiest one. And then we're going to move on to the bigger holes where you have something like this, or you're removing a electrical box and you have a very large hole like this, or possibly a doorknob hit into the sheetrock too and knock the hole in the sheetrock. I'm going to show you how to do all three of them, and it's fairly easy. This is an example of what kind of tools you're going to need. You're going to need some tape to tape the joints. You're going to need either a screwdriver, whether it's handheld or if it's a power screwdriver. You're going to need a couple of sheetrock screws, a straight edge so you can draw a line and cut a straight edge. After the sheetrock spackle dries, we're going to need a sanding block to sand it off. We're not going to do that now because obviously it's going to take a day to dry, but you'll need a sanding block to clean the spackle off. You're going to need a pair of scissors or a utility knife to cut the tape before you put it back on. This is just how I remove mollies. A pencil, a knife like this to cut the sheetrock, something to measure what you're doing, a couple of spackle knives, a piece of wood, and of course some spackle. Alright, so we're going to do the smallest one first, so we're going to move some of the stuff out of the way so we can do this fairly quickly here. Different ways you can do it is you can come in here with a utility knife and you can cut the head of the molly off. I don't like doing it that way. You could do it that way, but the way I usually do it is I'll take a screw like this, just put it in here, screw it in just a couple of threads like that, and then you just grab the molly and you keep on working it around in a circle and it pulls right out, and now everything is out. You don't have to worry about a little bump in there or anything. Alright, so we'll take that and we'll put it on the side. Now, this part here is a little bit raised more than the sheetrock itself, and you want to make sure that's flat before you proceed any further. And the best way to do it is just take a rounded part of a screwdriver or a spackle knife and just put it in here like this, like that, and you just turn it back and forth like that. And what it does is you can see how it dimples the sheetrock. It dimples it down. So now we can put the spackle over it, and it'll be like it was never there before. So we're going to grab any kind of spackle. There's all different kinds you can buy. This is just one that I happen to pick up in the big box stores, but there's all different kinds that you can get. All right. Now that we dimpled that down a little bit, you just take your spackle knife, put it over the top, like this, and you want to push down on it so that the spackle actually fills in the hole itself. You just have downward pressure and it actually fills up the hole all the way. You wipe away the excess, and now once this dries, it'll be like it was never there before. I will tell you this, sometimes the spackle shrinks a little bit. If the spackle was to shrink and it still has a little bit of a dimple in it, then tomorrow or the next day you just come in with your spackle one more time and you fill it in one more time just like that, making sure that you wipe away any of the residue around it, because that way it's much easier to clean it up later on. So that's the easiest one to repair. That's a very simple one. And what it does, it actually pushes the spackle through the hole and it actually comes out on the other side. So we know that the hole is filled with spackle. Okay? That's the easiest one to do. The next one is, if you're nailing a nail on the wall and you miss and you knock a hole in the wall with your hammer, where you have to fix a small hole like that, how do you fix that? There's different ways to do it. The easiest way that I find to do it is to just take a straight edge like this and just draw a line like this. And now we're going to cut that out into a square. You can use a a tool like this is meant to actually cut into the sheetrock, which is probably the easiest way to go. You just put it on top like that, and you tap it, and it goes right through into the sheetrock, and then you just saw it. Just like that. Same thing here. All right. Now, if you don't have this type of a knife or a tool, you can use a regular straight razor, and you just come on here like this, put your tool here so you go in a straight line, and you just cut it like this. Just a couple times like that. Cuts through the paper. Go here, the same thing. And what we'll do is we'll just push the sheetrock through that we cut off. Now instead of having this stuff, if it falls in the wall, it's no big deal. It can fall down in the wall. It's not going to really do anything. We're going to take it and make sure we have a nice clean opening here. So we just cut this paper off like this so it's actually nice and smooth. This way when you put it back together later on, there's no bumps in it. Just like that. Okay, so now instead of having a round hole in there, we have a square hole that we cut into it. Next thing we're going to do then is we're going to take a piece of sheetrock, a piece of scrap sheetrock, and we're going to measure the size of that opening right there. And it's 1.5 by 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a piece out of this that's going to be 1.5 by 2, but I want to explain this to you. I'm going to mark it right now. And this is the size of the hole right here, so when we cut this, it'll fit perfectly in there. But if you have no way to attach it in the back here, with a hole that small, you need to get a piece of wood inside the hole so you can actually attach it to it. But I'm going to show you how to do a small hole without doing that. What we're going to do is we know that it's 1.5 by 2. Check one more time. 1.5 by 2. So instead of making it 1.5 by 2, we're going to actually make it a little bit bigger. We're actually going to make this 3 because we want to have a 1/2 inch on either side, and it was 1.5, so we're going to make it 2.5. So this is the size that we want to cut out right now. So again, you can take your utility knife and you can come over here and you can cut it with the utility knife, or you can just use a tool like this and cut it like that. I prefer a utility knife because it actually gives you a much better, cleaner cut. And this does not have to be exact. As you can see, I did cut through. all the way through here. And we're going to do the exact same thing right here as well. We're going to cut through here too. Put this to the side for now. Now remember that hole, we're going to make it, it was 2.5 or 1.5. We have a 2.5. So now what we want to do is we want to take off we're going to take a 1/2 inch off on this side here and a 1/2 inch on this side here. We'll do the exact same thing here. And now we took off a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here, which then gives us 2 inches in the center, which is the size of the hole. Now the other way it was actually 1.5, and we actually have it at 2.5. We're going to mark off a 1/2 inch on both sides here. Right, and now what we're going to do, we're just going to mark this up. You don't have to mark it, but I want to explain to you why I'm doing it. Okay, so we came in a 1/2 inch on both sides because we need that hole. The plug for this here has got to be 2 inches by 1.5 inches. And if you look in here, you'll see the inside now is 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches. And here, it's 2 inches. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our utility knife and we're going to come along here and we're going to cut along these lines right here. And I want to point this out too, we're actually not cutting on the face over here, we're cutting on the back of the sheetrock, the part that's not going to be exposed. So now we just take this and we snap it very easily, just like that. And then we take this part, pull it down, take this sheetrock off of that paper. Just like that. We're leaving the paper and we're just taking off the back of the sheetrock. Just like that. And you see that little bit of sheetrock that stayed on there? You want to make sure that that's off of there as well because that will actually be a little bit of a bump. You see that little piece there? We're going to take that off as well. We are going to clean up here and we'll come right back to it. But now you can see that this plug now, it fits right inside of that hole right there. Now let me just clean up a little bit over here and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to actually install this and how to flatten it off. But that's what the plug piece looks like. So let me just clean this up and we'll come right back. So now that you have your patch all cut out, we're just going to disregard these marks here because we did this before just for demonstration purposes. Now what we do is you take some spackle, just like this, and we put a little bit of spackle here on each one of the corners, just like this. Just think of spackle as glue. It actually joins all of the material together. All right, then we're just going to put a little bit of spackle here, just like that. Okay, then we take our piece, we push it in here like that, push it down. And then we take our knife or spackling tools and we just do this away, just like that. Again, you want to make sure that you clean up all of the spackle while it's wet. When you clean it up when it's wet, it saves you a little bit of sanding or clean up later on. So we just go like this again, make sure we have that stuck down really well, just like this. And you want to make sure that the patch that you put on, the plug that you put in here, is lower than the sheetrock itself, because we are going to have to put a little bit of spackle in there, so you want to make sure you push it down so that this part that you repaired is a little bit lower. All right, now after that dries in a day or so, the outside edges will be stuck down like glue. It won't go anyplace. But I'm going to show you now what you'll do after, the next day after you come back. You're going to come in here and you'll wipe this down with your sanding block or a wet cloth or something to get any kind of residue off. Then we just take a little bit of spackle, just like this. We go over it like that, and we just spread it down like this. Then you would take a bigger spackling tool that covers the entire edge, and you just rub it over the top like this. And then we would wait a day for this to dry thoroughly again, and then we come in and put our final coat of spackle on it. Now I can't do it because it is still wet, but you would come in with your final coat, and you would go over the top of it, and it would look sort of like this when it's finished. And then you would just sand it off once it dries, and it will be perfectly smooth like the rest of the wall itself. Now you can see that this hole is actually starting to go down a little bit, and the reason that that's happening is because the sheetrock spackle is drying, and as it dries, it does shrink a little bit. So then you, if that was to happen, you just come in and you put a little bit on like this. And then we would let that dry and then make sure that it actually doesn't need another coat. Again, make sure you take off all of the extra spackle that's on here. It'll be easier later on. All right, so that's the two easy ones to do. The one that's a little bit more difficult, and we're going to move this to the side here. The one that's a little more difficult is something like this. When you have a very large hole in the wall, there's two different ways you can fix it. The way you can fix it, the way that I usually do it, is just like I did this one over here. I just make a very large patch, put it over the top exactly as I did this one, and then we spackle over the top of it. But I'm going to show you another way, and if you don't want to do this, something like that. So what we're going to need to do, let's get this out of the way. What we're going to need to do is we're going to have a piece of wood and a couple of drywall screws. Let's get this out of the way as well. And what you would do is that now this is on your wall, and obviously you can't get this piece of wood in there, but you can slide it in sideways through here. This is actually going to be 2.5 inches deep, so you'll be able to put this in and then make the turn and pull it back over. So let me come around on that side, and I'm going to put that piece of wood in there. Okay, so now obviously our wall, there is going to be the thickness of a piece of 2x4 is how thick this is going to be. So we are going to have, and I just want to show you so you see how to do it. You're going to have the room to put this piece of wood in through that hole just like that, and you're going to pull it back over here like this. You're going to take your drill, I should say your screwdriver. You're going to take your screwdriver, take your piece of wood, Put your piece of wood on here, and you come in here with the screw, just like this. Okay, you want to make sure that the screw, it dimples down just like that. Now we're going to take our second screw, and we're going to do the exact same thing. You want to dimple it down just a little bit, just like that. All right, now I'm going to flatten this down so you can see what I'm doing, like this. Now I'm going to get my ruler. I'm going to measure this, and we're going to cut a piece for this. So let me just put this down and grab that, and we'll do that. Okay, now what we do is we have our piece of wood here. We're going to measure the size of the hole itself, and now we're going to cut a plug that's the same size as the opening itself. And we can see here it's 2 1/4 by 3 1/4. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut it 2 1/4 by 3 1/4. Do you have to mark it? No, but I just want to mark it so I show you what I'm doing. And then that is the size that we're going to cut out, so it's going to go right into this hole right here. So now we're going to take our utility knife, and we want to have it clean cut on the face right here because that's the part that's going to be exposed. So we're just going to take our utility knife, and we're going to mark it a couple of times just like this. I am going to cut it on this piece of wood just so I don't damage the sheetrock that we're working with. Now we cut through all the way right here. This part we can just bend it, and now we can cut it with the utility knife, just like that. And now you can see this fits right in here, just like that. So let me grab my drill, electric screwdriver, and we're going to take this, put it on the top right here, and we're going to screw this down into the beam that we just put in there with that little piece of wood that we just installed. And again, you want to dimple it down just a little bit like that. All right? And the next thing we're going to do is take our tape like this. This tape is actually spackling tape. There's all different kinds they make out there, but this is like a mesh membrane that goes over the top, and the back of it is sticky right here, so it actually sticks down fairly well. If it's not sticky, then you would just need to put some spackle on here to stick the tape to. So you just take it like this, put it over the top like that. And then stick it down. And you can just cut it off. Just like that. We'll do the same thing on this joint right over here as well. Just like that. Now, if by chance the hole that you have in there is too big and the two pieces don't touch up against each other, you can put the tape on four sides. If it's a very large piece of sheetrock, you can run the tape around all four of the corners like that. All right, so now after we have this stuck down, we're going to grab our spackle and we'll spackle that joint. I'll do this. You just put the spackle over it. Now you can't expect to have a perfect repair the first time you put the spackle on. You will need to put the spackle on, and you will need to push the spackle down to get it through that mesh. And pushing down so that it goes through, and it goes inside, right? All of those little openings right there, this spackle goes in through there. So we're just going to do this. All right, as you can see now, this spackle, again, just like the other one, is going to have to dry. Once this dries, this will actually sink down a little bit. The spackle will start to shrink a little bit, and you will be left with a little bit of a void in there that you'll need to fill up. Now, after this is thoroughly dried, you will come back the following day. You would take your sanding block, such as like this. Obviously, you'll be working right in this area here. I'm just going to demonstrate it right here. You just take your sanding block and you just go in motion back and forth, just like that, just to remove any of the rough edges around here. And then once you have that smooth again, then you would take the spackle again. You'd come over the top of the area where you just did it, and you would actually smooth it out. And then again, you would let this dry for 24 hours, or however period of time it takes to dry. Once it dries, you would actually come back in here with your sanding block a second time, sand it, and at that point, either you may need another coat, or it may be perfect. But that's how you fix 3 different size holes in the wall. Obviously, if you have a very large piece that you're removing, you would just do this, but on a larger scale, and you would tape around there with the spackling tape. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.